So being able to communicate clearly is important. Think about how you might do this in the writing fiction part of your examination, which is known as Part B or Section B. Now, one of the most important things you can do is to consider how to use effective paragraphs. Now, these can be used for different reasons. They can help to organise your ideas in your writing. They can indicate a change of focus. They can show that someone new is going to be speaking. They can indicate a change of time. Let's have a look at this title then as an example, showing you how to use different types of paragraphs. So write a story with the title, The Day I Wanted to Change. When the alarm went at 7 o'clock, there was no mistaking it. The noise trilled through my bedroom and I knew I had to get up like every other day. But today was different. It would mark out the rest of my life, so sit back and listen to my story. Now in the next example, you've got a similar story, but it's in one paragraph. So have a look at how it's different. Write a story with the title, The Day I Wanted to Change. 7 o'clock, there was no mistaking it. The alarm trilled through my bedroom, and snoozing would not change the fact that I had to get up like every other day. But today was different. It was a day to mark out the rest of my life. Now, in these two examples, you can probably see that paragraph choice can have a significant impact on how the writing works for the reader or the audience. And it isn't just a case of writing in one paragraph, as it's likely that you're going to need to change other bits too. So we're going to move on in this session now to think about how we can communicate more effectively with your audience. So let's move on to think about what not to do. I'm going to use an example from a previous session to help you based on the same title, The Day I Wanted to Change, which you will see on the screen. Now, as you listen to this, have a really good think about how it sounds to you. The light poured in through the gap in the curtains, the room was stuffy, overly warm, and it was mid-November, so it must mean the central heating is on the blink again. I had dry lips, sticky eyes, muzzy head, that's how I felt. Like I had a low-grade flu, I was fed up with it and wanted to change, and this was the day I made a decision, and that was that. Now, in terms of content, and what I've given you here is almost identical to what I have shown you previously. However, there is a significant difference, which is, have you got it yet? Okay, I'll tell you in case you haven't, it's punctuation. Now, if you look at the example I've just read you, you will see I have used a lot of commas. So much so that this is known as comma splicing, where I am basically overusing commas as opposed to other forms of punctuation. Now, commas are great, they definitely have their place, but not if they are overused. It does not allow the reader to read the text effectively if I use a lot of commas, because the pauses are in the wrong place. Look at the example from the last session again. The light poured in through the gap in the curtains. The room was stuffy, overly warm, and it was mid-November, so it must mean the central heating is on the blink again. Dry lips, sticky eyes, muzzy head. That's how I felt, like I had a low-grade flu. I was fed up with it and wanted to change, and this was the day. I made a decision, and that was that. Now, hopefully, as you've listened to that, you can see how it reads so much better than the previous one. It's clearer, the pauses are in the right place, and as a result, has a much better impact on the audience. So, I have focused on commas here, but let's think a bit about spellings. Now, here is another task I introduced you to earlier on, which you can see on the screen. Write about a time when you were lost and alone. Now, imagine that this is your opening. When I sat down, I knew there was no point in looking any further. It was dark and cold and my feet hurt. I wanted to go home. Now, listening to that is fine, but you can see there are some very obvious errors. I need a capital for I, the pronoun. I have the wrong knew, there, no, and feet. So I'm muddling up my homophones. And I also use the ampersand for and, which actually is quite lazy. And hurt, H-E-R-T, well, it should be H-U-R-T. We will cover accuracy in more detail later on, but it's worth allowing yourself some time to check through your work to make sure it's as clear as it possibly can be. Just a little bit about semicolons. You might have noticed that I've included these in some of my example writing. Semicolons are essentially pauses, a bit of a cross between a full stop and a comma. They are used to link parts of a sentence together and for separating longer items in a list. Let's continue with the same idea as before, a time when you were lost and alone. You can see it on the screen. I felt totally lost, like a ship at sea. A ship that had lost its rudder. But really, I didn't know how to sort myself out. Jenny would just laugh. Andy would think it was a joke too. Okay, so here you can see where I've used semicolons and how they help to break up bits of a sentence, but they're still linked in some way. Now look at what I've got on the screen here. I was feeling really alone. Last week I ate a burger. You will hopefully see that the semicolon after alone isn't right. Both parts of the sentence are not at all linked, therefore I would need to think about what I'm writing and how I'm structuring it to make it make sense. So I've tried here to demonstrate how to write accurately in fiction writing, but I've only really just scratched the surface. There will be more on this later on, so if you need more support and revision, I will see you then.